Welcome to Political Perspectives. I'm Hugo Gurdon, Editor-in-Chief of The Washington Examiner. If you're joining us on YouTube, please, as always, I ask, like and subscribe to the channel and join the 250,000 others who are doing so. I am joined again today by Byron York, Chief Political Correspondent. And Byron, I wanted to talk about affordability and about this is the word that is being used now, and I guess it simply applies to the things that people used to call inflation and prices and that sort of thing. President Trump has set off on what appears to be the beginning of a kind of affordability tour. He was talking in Pennsylvania. You have written that this is perhaps even an urgent necessity, certainly a necessity. Why is that? What's going on?
Well, I think there's no doubt that President Trump was elected in November 2024 to do something about the economy. Inflation had hit 9.1% in the Joe Biden presidency and was still high. And that was the number one issue among voters in 2024. So Trump is elected to do something about that. Now, he does some stuff. Obviously, he does his tariffs, which a lot of people think will actually increase prices. So not really an anti-inflation move there. But he also does things like make energy cheaper, reduce regulations, do a lot of things that will probably actually reduce the rate of inflation. But still, there are a number of people, including some Trump voters, who feel like the president has not really devoted himself fully in his first year in office to bringing down prices. Now, we've seen a couple of special elections in which Democrats used the word affordability all the time and did very well against Republicans. Now, Trump doesn't like the word, but he realizes that what affordability means, which is the aftermath of inflation, in which wages still haven't caught up with the price increases of the Biden era, he knows that's a big issue. That's why he went to Pennsylvania and delivered a speech on Tuesday night. That's why he's going to go to other important states in the coming weeks and months. And that's why they're saying now it's going to be a theme of his midterm campaigning.
And there were some poll numbers asking voters for what they thought was the most important issue, and almost exactly as in the Biden era, they talked about inflation and they talked about prices or economic issues. Broadly speaking, they're talking about the same sort of thing, aren't they? And this adds up to more than half the people asked come up with essentially the same issue.
There are a lot of polls on this. In my newsletter, I cited a brand new poll from Harvard Harris, which asked a really, really simple question. What would you say are the most important issues facing the country today? That's an open-ended question. The pollster didn't give you 5 things to choose from. You could pick whatever you thought was most important. You could also pick more than one issue. Well, the number one issue was summarized as price increases / inflation / affordability. Number one. The second issue, by the way, was the economy and jobs.
Right.
And you put those two together, and you get by far the majority of Americans what they think is the most important issue today. Some of the things that the president has spent a lot of time on, they don't think are very important. If you look at the bottom of the list, you'll find foreign policy, which we know is important. A president has to conduct foreign policy. He has the constitutional authority to do so.
Right.
On the other hand, you know, if he brags about brokering a peace agreement between, oh gosh, it was Albania and Azerbaijan, I think. You know, you brag about that. That is not going to get you a lot of support in an American election. So people want prices to go down. They want their wages to go up to meet the prices, and that's what they want the president to do.
Now, there seems to me a danger for President Trump in a certain degree of mixed messaging because, you know, even out on the affordability tour that he's on, he used the word hoax and in the past he's suggested that it's sort of a non-issue or it's a hoax. I mean, perhaps because most of the inflation that took place was under Democrats and they now want to blame him for it. Right. Nevertheless, isn't there a danger that, you know, what he should be saying perhaps is this isn't a hoax. It's real. Real people feel real effects from this. I'm trying to fix it for you. Isn't there? Is he getting the message out clearly, or is he kind of mixing it up?
Well, it seems a little mixed up to me. Trump, because Democrats had so much success with the word affordability, he really reacted badly to the word. And
Right.
he did call it a hoax. And then later in his speech in Pennsylvania, he says, well, it's not really a hoax because prices really are up and we're bringing prices down. And he goes into his spiel about that.
Right.
But you're right. He can't come out and say, this is a hoax. And one thing you can't do if you have a significant number of voters who are feeling economic pressures. You cannot, as a politician, go to them and tell them that things are great when
Right.
they're not. And
Yeah.
they know that. You cannot talk up an economy if people are struggling under their credit card bills.
Yeah.
So he has to be pretty careful about
Yeah,
that.
he has to be careful, and you're right. And it's not, one doesn't have to think back very far because this is what Joe Biden was doing. And when people were complaining about prices in 2022 as they rose to, as you say, 9.1%, there were people. The White House spokeswoman, I think Jen Psaki at that time, was talking about it like it's an upper class problem. It doesn't work because there are a lot of people outside the upper classes, not in the top wealth brackets, who feel it, and they say, "No, this is BS. It's not somebody else's problem. It's our problem, and we need it fixed." But there is one point that you made in your column, which I think is worth drawing out here. And there's a difference between inflation and affordability to the extent that if wages are outstripping inflation, people's buying power is increasing. Now, I think you said that there's a certain degree of good news on that. So, is that right?
There is indeed. First of all, the thing to be super careful about this, and you heard Joe Biden when inflation started going down from that 9.1% that you mentioned. When inflation started going down, Biden would talk, inflation's going down, but prices were still going up.
Right.
The fact is if prices are going up 9.1% over the previous year, that's a huge amount. But if they're going up 4% over the previous year, they're still going up. They're
Right.
not coming down. So when a president touts a decreasing rate of inflation, he's not saying that prices are actually going down. The way out of the problem is to get the inflation rate low, like 2%,
Mm-hmm.
and then have wages increased to meet and surpass that inflation rate so people can afford what they need to buy. I mean, I mentioned credit card balances a minute ago. I mean, the balances are increasing so much that a lot of experts think people are using credit cards to buy everyday necessities, and
Yeah.
that's a bad place to be. So what you want is their wages to increase to the level that they can afford the necessities that everybody needs for life. And I did quote Larry Kudlow of Fox Business, who was a Trump economic advisor in the first administration, note that in recent numbers, prices are the increase in wages is outstripping the increase in prices. So that is actual good news.
And that obviously President Trump and the Republicans want people increasingly to feel the impact of that. Perhaps that flip to faster wage growth than inflation is fairly recent. Does that mean that the Republicans and President Trump are in something of a race against time? The midterms are coming up in less than a year. They want as many voters as possible to feel the benefit because it's what voters feel that will really determine what happens in 2026. So you know, are they? Can we expect the trend to be a good one for the Republicans and Trump on this, or I mean, is it too short a race?
Well, you're right about the race against time. Now, Kudlow, who is an optimistic man, says
Right.
things are going in the right direction now, but he said they're going to get more so in the next year because you'll have tax refunds based on the new rates in the big, beautiful bill. You'll have no taxes on tips. And for a lot of Social Security recipients, you'll have no taxes on Social Security. So people will have more money. They will feel that they can afford the basics in life and perhaps a splurge every now and then as well. And they will feel better about the economy. That is the whole plan
Right.
of the Trump midterm campaign. we'll just see if it actually happens or not.
Right. Let's switch to a different but nevertheless connected issue, connected by the idea of what people can afford. Republicans and Democrats are back fighting on Capitol Hill, partly to keep the government open. But the thing that the government staying open hinges on, just as it did in the last deal, is the issue of Obamacare special subsidies. The Democrats created the shutdown the last time, the longest shutdown in history, because they insisted that temporary subsidies, which were introduced and then reintroduced and then re-upped because of the COVID emergency, and in fact they were re-upped, I think, after everyone believed and understood the COVID emergency to have gone away. They're just about to expire, and the Democrats want them re-upped, I think, very significantly for another 3 years without any other questions asked. 3 years, of course, would take us right through to the presidential election. Seems to me what they're trying to do is have it as an issue that they can run on the presidential election. They want these subsidies to go on forever. They don't really regard them as emergency or temporary subsidies. They want to run against Republicans and tell voters in the 2028 presidential election that the Republicans are going to hike their health care premiums. Is that really what's going on here? That's why they're digging in the heels?
That's exactly what's going on here. The bigger question is, once the government starts giving out money, can it ever stop?
Right.
If you start giving out a huge amounts of money to people who had previously not received such subsidies, you say we're doing it because of the emergency. And when the emergency's over, you say, okay, we're going to stop paying you now. And they say, whoa, wait a minute. No, we've gotten used to this.
Right.
And that is basically what has happened. And I think a lot of Republican lawmakers on Capitol Hill are really feeling a lot of tension. I mean, they know, I think, logically, that it makes no sense for this special emergency Obamacare premium subsidy to continue way past the COVID emergency. But at the same time, healthcare prices or health coverage prices have gone up so much,
Right.
contrary, by the way, to the promise of Obamacare,
Right.
that they realize that people will have a hard time paying for some of their premiums if these special subsidies are stopped. So they think, well, let's try to reform the system a bit so the rate of increase in premiums will slow, and then maybe we can get these subsidies under control. But the fact is, right now, I would imagine you're going to see some sort of plan to continue the subsidies for some length of time, and institute some sort of reforms that may or may not actually reduce any prices here. But the bottom line, it will confirm the idea that once you start giving out money, it's really hard to stop.
Yeah, one final question on that. Well, is there any chance that the Republican hope of not simply splashing out more money, building up debt, be helped at all by the recent report that there's 27 billion or more of fraud in Obamacare? It's an enormous amount of fraudulent claims, improper payments. We're seeing this bloated welfare state being taken advantage of by fraudsters, essentially, by thieves. Does that help the Republicans make the case? Or, frankly, when one talks about fraud and abuse, people get excited temporarily, but they still want their money flowing in. Is it going to help them?
Unknown. I mean, healthcare has always been a really fertile area for fraud. There's zillions of dollars in such fraud, and has been for years. Now, I think what we might see here is Democrats making the argument that, look, we're not saying there's no fraud. We're not saying that in a perfect world you wouldn't go after that. But if you take draconian measures to stop this fraud, you will be taking healthcare away from people who need it. We've seen something like that with another government program that's absolutely rife with fraud, the Earned Income Tax Credit, one of the most abused programs in the government, where everybody knows the government is sending out billions of dollars a year that are fraudulently received, and yet the argument is, well, if you stop paying it, then there would be people who do genuinely need it who wouldn't get it. So they decide to just accept a level of fraud to be able to help the whatever target constituency there is here. So I'm not sure after these reports of Obamacare fraud whether we're going to see efforts to actually, literally, truly clean it up. Or a bunch of excuse making saying, well, it's really bad and we're going to try to clean it up, but we need to get help to people who need it.
Yeah, it seems to be that there's not much of a constituency for restraint. Probably more of the latter of what you said, more excuse making and more piling up of debt, which is not an optimistic note on which to end. But Byron, thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all to the viewers who've joined us again. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe to our channel, and then join us again next time.